we're back. Sorry, all of a sudden the Wi-Fi just was like, yeah, no, I'm tired. So we'll wait for you guys to jump back on. Very sorry about that interruption.
Yep. I must have been talking too long.
Yeah, come back to us. Sorry about that, guys.
Let's see.
Okay, so James was just talking about the fragile male ego, and well, really, for anybody who wasn't with us before, this is real talk on marriage, intimacy, and sex, which we're gonna get to the sex part on the second half, just from a biblical perspective. And so we want to strengthen and encourage marriages today in honor of our 10-year anniversary, which we're very excited about. So thank you for being with us and being patient with us. I'll let this airplane go by.
Cleared hot.
Wow, it's really flying. We're in the garage for anybody who didn't get that the first time. So yes, all of the outdoor noises are present. All right. So you want to finish up your thoughts on that, or?
I was talking about how essentially wives are uniquely placed to gas up their husbands. At the same time, they can also destroy their husbands. That's why their ego seems fragile in your grasp. That was the gist of it. I'm sorry, I lost the train of thought.
That was good though. So we don't have to coddle our husbands to avoid constructive criticism altogether. But there is a way to point out a flaw without belittling, demeaning, or deflating our husbands. And don't automatically assume that your spouse is doing things with malicious intent. I think that was from the Love and Respect book as well, but that's something that has just really helped our marriage. Like if he forgets to do something I asked him to do, say like I asked him, can you take out the trash? And the night just got away from him. We go to bed, I wake up the next morning and that trash is still in there. It's crazy to just be like, he didn't do that just to spite me or whatever. And it sounds crazy when you say it, but a lot of times we think that way. And so we're creating more tension where there really isn't any. It was an honest mistake. He forgot and he'll correct it when he gets to it. But just give your spouse the benefit of the doubt. It makes a huge difference in your relationship. No man or woman, for that matter, appreciates being nagged or nitpicked at. Men will shut down if everything that they hear from the person who's supposed to be their helper is constantly negative. So just keep that in mind. There's a lot that you can say about what your spouse is doing, but don't always be looking to point out a flaw. Sometimes just keep it to yourself if it's really not that big a deal.
All right, so we talked about earlier about how I was going to give more detail about how to fulfill your role as a husband, which was to love your wife, and this is it. So the very first thing that I found that helped us to have a good, successful 10 years and hopefully 10 times more after that is to study your wife like she is a textbook, like she is a class, a term paper. Figure her out. If you're not willing to take the time, and yes, it will take time, or the effort, and yes, it will take effort, to study your wife, you're not ready to have a wife. All right. So for anybody out there in the fiance mode, or even that haven't reached that mode, think about that. It's yes, it may seem real simple and real easy. I would caution that those sort of situations where you really need to think about it, like how much studying have I done of this person, because it's very important, particularly on the man's side, to study your wife. All right. Because here's the facts. As a man, you don't really understand women, right? But because women are a little weird, we're from wisdom. We're from Mars, y'all from Venus, something like that. I don't know why you ain't from the same planet. Whatever, you guys are weird. But sometimes in fleeting moments and windows, you get to understand your wife, all right? It's through study, trial, and error, and communication. And it's really important because I really put emphasis on trial and error because it may seem rough and it may seem you're not going anywhere, but it's kind of like a relationship with God. That struggle, that passion-induced attempt to get closer to God, when you don't understand certain things that are going on, God loves that because that takes intimacy. You're getting closer. You're learning more about God your struggle is revealing more about yourself, and as a result, you've become closer. And that's the same stuff is going to happen with studying. And some of y'all are going to have more passionate study sessions than others. I'm not talking about that in like the good passion sense. I mean, like it's just going to be passionate. Some of y'all are just fire people, and that's great. That's why God put y'all together. But we love y'all and bless y'all for that. But understand that it has to be that deliberate study. And one some of the things that you're looking for when you're doing study is love languages, right? So growing up as a Christian, I heard love languages a lot. I never knew exactly what they were. All right, but there are actually 5 love languages, and I challenge you, or just like the woman wives had a challenge from Amber earlier. Husbands, I'm challenging you to go out and study the 5 love languages. God has blessed us with this great, wonderful tool called Google. And Google will tell you what the 5 love languages are. They'll provide you with a test for how to test what your love languages are.
Super quick, too.
Yep. And more importantly, what your wife's love languages are. And it's a generalization, of course, but still it's going to help you give a start point to learn what way you need to speak to your wife in love. All right. And it's very important because, as we learned before, we require respect. Our wives require love in a relationship. Think of it as she has a tank that you need to fill up with love. So I'm going to talk about my wife and the love languages that she likes. She likes acts of services and touch. I like words of affirmation. And I say like, these are things that are innately a part of who we are. I didn't know I like that, but it made sense. I thought that everyone liked words of affirmation, like your attaboys. That's respect. I mean, of course, if I do something for you, I tell you thank you, that's good stuff. If my face looks like I didn't like it, but I said, no, I liked it, you know what the real truth is. Forget what the face said. I said I liked it. Obviously, that's how I feel. As you can see, she was shaking her head on that because that is not at all how she is wired, how she is built. And I thought that was so weird until I understood that she's literally talking a different language. She talks acts of service and touch. An example of this, of how it used to conflict, and if anybody knows us, we've told this story bunches of times. If there was this time where Amber asked me to wash dishes, and I was absolutely going to wash dishes. This is before I understood that if I don't do it immediately, I need to make sure I say something because she says, I want you to wash the dishes. I want you to wash the dishes right now. I said, I'm going to wash those dishes. Believe that. You can take it to the bank. All right? It didn't happen fast enough, so she washed the dishes for me. And I was just so grateful. I said, babe, thank you very much for washing the dishes. And she was like, okay.
Was not welcome.
And I was thinking and I went about my head. Man, I gave her the ultimate of respect. I gave her a word of affirmation. I took time and told her exactly how I felt because she did something for me. But she was showing her love language to me, which I was like, all right, whatever. But here's my love language to you. It didn't click, So it did not. It wasn't received how I wanted to receive, and that did not fill her love tank up. Now I know that acts of services is a way to fill her love tank up. So I'll try to go out of my way to do certain things that I know she likes. I'll learn the way she folds a towel, and I'll just do it. And then hey, pro tip, don't just let them know you about to do that. Just fold the towel up, and then a couple of days, maybe even weeks later, it's a long con, she look up there, it's like, I ain't fold this, but it's folded right. Mm-hmm. Babe, did you fold this? And you'd be like, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I folded that towel. Mm-hmm. And then she'd be like, oh, snap. And you can just see, the love tank going up. Mm-hmm. So, one of the easy ways, from me to you, just take that in your mind, put that in your toolbox. Okay, I'm talking too long. What else we got? We studied the wife. We talked about love languages, words of affirmation. Okay, so another thing too on that, having different love languages. Now that we understand what our love languages are, because it's still very natural to me to use words of affirmation as my very first go-to way of trying to speak love to someone. And Amber will understand my love language. She'll tell me thank you. She'll, always give me attaboys, build me up. I'll try to act all humble, like, oh man, it's all good. But inside I'm like, brrr. So understanding that, if I go to my natural when I'm blessing and loving on her, even though that's not something that naturally speaks to her, she will know. She understands that, okay, he's paying me huge love and huge compliment because he's speaking in his love language.
Yeah, it means more to me now than it did.
And then vice versa, when she's doing stuff. There's another story. I know it's getting long, but this story we didn't talk about. We were going to tell it, but it's not a bad story. But it was back when we were in our courtship phase. And I was over her and parents' house, and they were about to go get some food. I wasn't hungry. Amber's like, "Hey, babe, you hungry?" I was like, "Oh, no, I'm good." And she's like, "Okay." She come back with food anyway. I didn't eat it because, I wasn't hungry. So I was like, "Oh, thank you." But I wasn't hungry. And she just looked perplexed, not necessarily mad, right? But she was like, what you mean?
This food.
Like, I brought you this food, like, acts of service, love, and I just like, it was just like, okay, that was nice, but maybe she didn't understand what I was saying when I said I wasn't hungry. So, this is ways getting across. So anyway, I say all that to say studying is very important. I recommend you get on this studying immediately, ASAP. Figure out what fills up your wife's love tanks, husbands, and man, your life will be so much easier. You'll be able to communicate and just bring all the goofy smiles to her face. It'll be great. So yeah, that's your challenge from me to you, is to learn love languages, learn your love language, and love the love language of your wife.
Yes. So fulfilling our husbands. Be encouraging. Affirm your man. Let him know that you're proud of him, that he's your hero, and that you truly appreciate him. Because I think kind of across the board, men like words of affirmation. Even if that's not their primary love language, it is something that's very important. When he's aware that you're noticing his hard work, he responds positively and reciprocates. And so it's not unusual for me to thank James for washing the dishes or taking out the trash, and then he'll immediately thank me for taking care of the kids or, whatever I have done right then that he could think of. So try to give 3 specific verbal praises every single day, because that helps you to focus on the positive instead of on the negative. Because if you are looking for something wrong, you will find something wrong every single time. Truly ask yourself if your husband is glad to come home to you or to be locked in the house with you during coronavirus, or is he dreading having to come home to you? The phrase "be his peace" is kind of cliche and kind of comedic even, but it's true. We should be a place of peace for one another. Be his friend. Study your husband and meet him where he is. Find an interest of his and join in, even if it's not something that you love to do. James loves movies, and I love TV, but they're 2 very, very different things, because a TV show will have a different plot and it's quick and fast paced, whereas a movie, you're watching this thing for 3 hours and it's just like, okay. But he loves that. It's really important to him. And then after he watches movies, there's this YouTuber, he does this thing called pitch meetings, and then it's like, a review, and it's kind of funny. So I'll try to watch the movie and watch the pitch meeting with him, whether or not I truly care. And a lot of times, honestly, I end up being entertained. Yes, sometimes I'm not. Yeah. But I like being able to have something to talk about with him. So it works out in both of our favor, because sometimes, it's like, oh, wow, I've been entertained by something that I usually would not have watched if not for trying to join it with him. Joining in on their interests creates an avenue for conversation that does not put our husbands on the spot, because sometimes uncomfortable pressure is created when we're like, we need to talk. I have something I need to discuss with you. Then their walls go up and they get defensive, or they're ready to shut down instead of being ready to engage in conversation with you. So avoid it being like some mysterious talk is happening later. Or for me, I would shut down at the beginning when I would get mad and just be really, really quiet. And he would know something was wrong, maybe didn't know what was wrong, but you could guarantee right around bedtime, about 10 o'clock p.m., I was going to be like, so I need to talk to you. And of course, it's like now he's exhausted and he's ready to go to bed, and this crazy woman is beside him trying to have a 3-hour-long discussion. So know the time, know the place, because discussions do need to be had sometimes, but there's a way to go about it that is productive.
Speaking of that too, I didn't always know like that. I learned that usually. That's the trial and error part. I thought, and again, and this is actually pre-love languages. She said she was fine. I know y'all out there laughing at me, but she said she was fine. I asked 3 times, you fine? You good? You fine? You good? Oh, she must be fine. Sometimes I feel like not talking, and she ain't fine. Then the nighttime will come in. Lord, man, women, if you guys, wives, if you hear me, trust me, at no time at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, midnight, has a guy who was in his bed sleeping peacefully, you nudge him awake so you can talk down. Oh, thank God we were finally having this conversation. I guarantee you no one has ever said that, right? And, it's a conversation that most likely needs to be had. So fellas, understand that. But ladies, understand that there's just some situations, some circumstances where his guard may be down, and maybe, I don't know if that's like a tactic or strategy that may be subconsciously in your mind when you're picking those times, but that doesn't necessarily make it a good thing. Just because his guard down doesn't mean it's going to be a productive conversation. Understand the reason of this conversation. Yeah. At least this should be the reason of any conversation like that, is that it should be productivity, moving it forward, seeking a solution, right? So, and I get it. You're not always going to want to talk about it straight up when you're in the heat of the moment. Sometimes it may be better not to do that. But I can almost guarantee, I would be willing to put cash money on it, like lots of money, more money than I have, that there is not a man out there who was just hoping and praying like, man, we ain't talk about this, but maybe you should wake me up at 1 o'clock in the morning and we can get really into it, like 3 hours. I may have to go work in 4 more hours after that, but man, I really hope that happens. So, keep that in mind. And also, fellas, sometimes, like, they're going to, like, Amber tries her best. She does. And we've gotten so much better with those talks we need to have. And like, very few of them happen at night. But sometimes she just really ain't feeling like talking to her, or I've done something that makes her feel very unloved. And even though she knows it's best to talk then, sometimes you're going to have to push. And sometimes you're just going to have to, like, have that conversation. Like, there's been some times that I was like, like, midnight come up, like, roll over, like, babe, you want to talk about it?
Like, just the other night when we were preparing for this video, because he was talking earlier just about how I'm a lot more open and transparent. Ooh, and on that, my friend Amanda W., I don't know how to pronounce her married name, but I just had listened to her podcast on being transparent this week, and it was just so good. So I encourage you. I'll try to remember to put a link to that later after we finish this. But I am very open. I come from a very open family, and his family is, I wouldn't say they're not open, because they'll have a conversation, but not quite as live. And so as we were discussing what to discuss with you guys, I was like, we're going to talk about this and that. And he's like, no, we not. And so then I was like, you know what, let's just do this later. And I closed the laptop and we snuggled up and we watched a couple episodes of Blacklist, and we laid down, prayed and got ready to go to bed. And I wasn't even going to have a conversation because it was late, but he did ask. He was like, you want to talk about it? And I was like, I don't even have anything to say, but yes, I do, because I went all the way in. And I appreciated that you asked me, and we were able to go to bed on a good note, even though I still kind of was shaking my head at him. But anyway, moving on for the sake of speed, because we're about to get into the good stuff. Meet his physical needs. A wife should be the only friend with benefits, because we just talked about being his friend. So we're his friend with benefits that a man ever has. God gave women the gift of sex and men the need for sex. It is vital for man. Sex is not just for reproduction, it's for pleasure. Kay Arthur says that it's scientifically proven that the average man needs sex every 72 hours. Sometimes that's an unrealistic goal, especially when you have little kids, because they are little blockers. But we should make every effort to meet their physical needs often, so that we don't make room for the enemy. Because if we're not taking care of our husbands at home, there are plenty of women who are willing to do that for them. And not saying that that's what our men are looking for, but just saying we know what's out there and we want our men to be satisfied at home. So in Jewish culture, after the wedding feast, the newlyweds would go straight to the marriage tent and they would consummate their marriage while the reception is still going on. Family is eating and partying. And then that marriage sheet would be produced to show that the wife was indeed a virgin. Everyone knew what was going on in that tent, and no one was ashamed. It's not a shameful thing when sex is done in its proper context within the confines of marriage, because again, God gave us sex as a gift, and it's something for us to enjoy. Let's see. So because of this, studies apparently show that married people enjoy sex more than non-married, sexually active people, because there is no guilt or shame attached to it. There is no walk of shame coming home at, whatever time in the morning because you slept with some random person. No, it's not like that. You just get to enjoy it unbridled. And it's pure passion. That's what Kay Arthur calls a part of her ministry. This is a key point too for teenagers, young adults, anyone who's unmarried really. But it's so important to be open about this stuff. So now we get into it. It is going to get pretty real, but I promise I'm going to do my best to behave myself, because y'all know that sex is my favorite thing. Well, maybe you didn't know, but it is. Other than food, that's my favorite thing too. And the Lord. I love the Lord. And sex. No, the Lord is first. And I thank the Lord for sex. So.
All right. Don't put the Lord third in your things with list of likes. I'm just playing. Okay, so we're going to talk about some sex do's and don'ts. Start out with some don'ts, because apparently we're negative people. Don't expect your wife to be ready for sex at night if you haven't helped her with the house or kids all day. For a woman, sex doesn't begin in the bedroom. So, like, what does that mean, fellas? Sex don't begin in the bedroom. I know, that's weird. Of course, unless you're trying to be nasty. But what I mean is that sex is not just a physical thing for the ladies. They also feel, okay, so sex for us is almost strictly physical, right? There's very little, not saying very little emotional attachment to it, but compared to your wife, there is very little emotional attachment to it, because I can guarantee you majority of men out there can still feel some type of way about their wife, but they'd be like, oh, we gonna have sex? All right, let's do it. All right, the same cannot be said for your wife, right? They're gonna be wanting to feel loved all day. Their love tank will want to be filled at the point where you're trying to get to that intimacy. Now, while the Bible does say that neither party in the marriage is supposed to deny the other sex when done in a proper context, I'm not talking about forcing. We're gonna talk about a little bit about that later on. It's your job, remember from earlier, to fulfill your spouse's needs, and it's your wife's job to fulfill your needs. So what you should be able to do in a perfect marriage, a perfect situation, is to not even care about what you need. She got that. You should be fully consuming what she needs. So that means all day you should have been looking for ways to fill her love tank, to speak to her in her love language. Maybe that's cleaning the room. Maybe it's not. All right. So, like, don't fall into the generic trap of like, oh, I'm going to do all the chores. Amber won't let me wash my laundry. I don't get it. I'm an expert at it.
So
like, I save so much time.
That's not helping me.
Because I just put everything into it and I wash it. This was a revelation that I figured out from living in the barracks. You don't need to separate them. That's a little tip from me to you. No. But she won't let me do that.
Your wife will end up dingy. Don't listen to that. It's bad advice.
So even though that was some excellent advice I just gave you from the barracks, I sacrificed that to fill up my wife's love tank and let her wash the laundry. She loves that really fills up her love tank. Mm-hmm. She don't like dishes. I'll wash the dishes. Boom. That fills up her love tank. I'm not a fan of mopping. I'll do it. She loves a mop floor. She'll get down on her hands and knees to clean. She does that. I'll sweep. She does that. So, those are type of things that I talk about when it comes to chores. It could be anything else. If you're like me, you can be an island. You don't really talk to anybody to be happy, but you have a more sociable wife. Now, granted, Amber's probably the exception to my island rule. I'll talk her ear off. I love talking to her, and I'll listen to her, and I'll attempt to listen to her. Sometimes I don't catch everything, but I just like looking to her little brown eyes and like hearing her talk to me. So I'm still happy with it. But if your wife's like that, you then talk to her, listen to her. You may not have a lot to say, but do your best. Like for most part, your wives are going to see the effort you put in, and she's going to appreciate that. So just don't expect to have it your way all day, and then come nighttime, I'm gonna have it my way then too. All right, your wife's probably not gonna be on board with that.
Yeah, probably not.
Just saying. All right,
and just being real, like the reason that I always want to have sex with my husband is because he's nice. Like there's the saying, nice guys finish last or whatever. But when you're married, no, your wife wants you to be nice to her, and being nice includes helping her. And of course, right now we're in a unique situation where because of Corona and because he just was a college student, he wasn't doing his normal military job. He was home more often than not. So once we move from here and he is back working, he's not going to have as much time to help me do things around the house. I am a stay-at-home mom, and so I would say that the house is my job as well as the kids. But of course, when you have little kids, you can't always complete every chore on the list. It's just not possible. And that's just another note. Don't stress yourself out over the house. I'm not saying to have your house nasty. Definitely not. Do what you can. Enjoy your kids. And, that's something you guys need to listen to my girl, Annalisa. She is such an amazing mother. And there's another girl, Brittany Behrensberg. Both of them, I just like to tune in and listen to what they say about parenting, because I feel like marriage is very, very strong for me. It's I wouldn't say effortless, but when you put in the effort, it feels effortless. I think my friend Alyssa said something to that effect. But anyway, parenting is a lot harder for me. Like, it's a daily struggle. So when he's able to help me with the kids, even if that's just giving me 30 minutes of silence, like, can I please go to the bathroom by myself? They're getting on my nerves. All of that comes together to make me desire my husband physically. But if he has not been present when he could and not put forth any effort, then it's like, nah, I don't even want to touch a little trifling self. I don't even like you. So that does make a difference outside of the bedroom. It does start before.
Mm-hmm. All right. Don't number 2, don't force or withhold sex. And that can just pretty much be boiled down. Sex is not a weapon. Mm-hmm. Don't use it like a weapon. Mm-hmm. Every time you have sex, tell yourself, I remember that I gave myself to you. It's a covenant, seal, and sign for marriage, right? This is a voluntary thing for most countries anyway. Most of the modern developed countries, marriage is not something that you're forced into. And for most people, at least everyone I think who's watching this, was not forced into marrying their spouse. So remember that. And sex is part of it. So do not force that situation, and don't withhold it as well. The Bible tells us in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, 3-5, the husband should fulfill his wife's sexual needs, and the wife should fulfill her husband's needs. The wife gives authority over her body to her husband, and the husband gives authority over his body to his wife. That theme again, I don't have authority over my body. Amber has authority over my body. She ain't got authority over her body. I have authority over her body. That means I take care of her body at the expense of mine. I ain't got to worry about it, because she should also be doing the same for me. All right, back into the word. Do not deprive each other of sexual relations. So nice, relations. Unless you both agree to refrain from sexual intimacy for a limited time, so you can give yourselves more completely to prayer. Afterward, you should come together again so that Satan won't be able to tempt you because of your lack of self-control. A note on that. So yeah, we're talking about prayer, fasting. Those are times where it is okay to tell your spouse, hey, listen, we're just going to take a break. But you got to be in agreement with that, all right? There's been some fasts that I wanted to do. She wasn't ready for it, or vice versa. You got to be on the same page with your wife. Otherwise, you'll fall into that same thing. Remember, it's just not about this. The main takeaway, it's not just about you. It's not just about her. It's about y'all. Y'all is one now, okay? There has to be a consensus, especially in sex. Otherwise, you are forcing or you are withholding it, okay? Now, this is not talking about abuse. I'm not jumping ahead.
Teresa, you nasty. Yeah.
Am I jumping ahead? Okay, I'm jumping ahead. All right.
All right. So don't, ladies especially, take one for the team, because you think like, oh, I don't want to deprive my husband, and so you're like, I'm really not in the mood, but I'll just lay here and just do it. You don't. That's not what the Bible wants. It's okay to not be in the mood or to truly be too tired. It's okay to sometimes say no, but follow that no up with a time when you can. Oh, there it goes. Okay. A time when you can, so that your husband doesn't feel rejected, or if it's vice versa, so that your wife doesn't feel rejected. And just keep that in mind, because you never want them just to feel like they're unwanted. Pastor Mark Brungar, he has a bead jar method, where basically you have a little jar. If one of you puts the bead in there, that means within 24 hours, you guys, it's a sure thing. It's a sealed deal. And vice versa, if the jar is turned upside down, that means within 24 hours, you guys need to have a talk about something. And so that's something that you can utilize if you and your spouse have a hard time communicating on things such as that. Use different things, make it fun, make it interactive, and don't stress over it.
All right. Schedule time for sex and get your mind prepared, ladies. Or men. It might be a small contingent of men who this applies to. The norm is not that, but there are some of us who this applies to. But get schedule time for sex and get your mind prepared. As unromantic as it might be, or it might sound, sometimes it's necessary. especially after having a kid. All you parents out there understand it. That probably sounded more romantic than anything. Like, ooh, a scheduled time for a sex. Yes. This boy spitting. All right. So, like, yeah, set aside that time. And also understand that there are some actual romantic parts to it. The anticipation of that time can also be sexy. It can be really exciting. You can send a little saucy text or give an extra passionate kiss on the way out the door. Give a little bit of grabs, on the way out. Just make sure, little pro tip, make sure your kids don't see too much of that when you're going overboard, because they won't understand the difference. And so, they might try that with you or others, or they might not. So make sure that you being appropriate in front of your children. All right. Pro tip: morning, let's see, part ways. So yeah, just do some things that make sure at least your spouse knows that you're thinking about this time. And also, if it is falling on the men's side or even the women's side, if you're like into fitness and all that stuff, make sure you ain't working yourself out too much to where you have some energy left over for them, if it is at all possible. If you're like in the military, maybe you ain't got that choice, but still, make sure that if y'all have set a scheduled date, you know what I'm saying? There's probably both of y'all probably hotly anticipating it, but I guarantee you, there's probably one partner's anticipating it more. So make sure you work as though your partner is the one anticipating it more, so that you can be ready to just fully enjoy that time with each other.
I don't care if you spent 3 hours at the gym.
She really don't.
I don't care. That's your fault. I didn't tell you to do that. But anyway. If you have a hard time quieting your mind during sex so that you can fully engage, try to knock some major things off your to-do list and truly tell yourself that anything remaining can be thought about later. Think about your husband. Think about what he did recently that made you feel good or desired or loved or appreciated. And if you have to go back even further, think about why you married this man. Recall how steamy and passionate things were back then and truly desire to get that back. Think about your favorite thing about him physically. Maybe your arm muscle and back or whatever it is that you like about your husband. Think about that. Think about what sexually attracts you to him. And if you find yourself not sexually attracted to your husband, you need to figure out why aren't you attracted to him? What is the root of that? Is it because you're offended? Has there been a major physical change? Are you comparing him to someone else or being attracted to someone else, or vice versa, men with your wives? Or whatever the reason is. Figure it out and get yourself together so you can enjoy your spouse. Just like 1 Corinthians 10:5 tells us that we can take every thought captive that sets itself up against the knowledge of God, we too have the power to control our thoughts in this area. It's easier said than done, but it takes a conscious effort. And another thing I didn't write down, when you finally get that quiet time to enjoy one another physically, that is not the time of day to give the announcements. Because that's something I struggle with. I'm not generally like distracted during, but that's the first time of day a lot of times where there's no children running around, there's no TV, it's quiet. And so then it's like, oh, I forgot to tell you, Caleb has a dentist appointment, and just save that for later. That's not the time. If you have trouble focusing because you're self-conscious about your body, turn the lights off or use low light. You can turn on the TV with just nothing on it. The TV will provide some light to where it's not overpowering, but you can still see each other as much as you'd like to. Or just the flashlight on your phone. Do things that are practical for you so that you can enjoy it. You're not worried about, am I making a crazy face or is my fat jiggling on the side or whatever. Have fun. Don't take yourself too seriously and just enjoy the entire experience from beginning to end. Another one, let him be your headache medicine. A lot of times women will say, I have a headache, so I can't. Like, that's the go-to excuse. But a study from the University of Munster, Germany, shows that sex can lead to partial or complete relief of migraines in about 1/3 of those included in the study. Endorphins are the body's natural painkillers, and endorphins are released when you're having sex. According to WebMD, sexually active couples are happier, healthier, and they live longer. Sex boosts your immune system, strengthens your pelvic floor, lowers your blood pressure, lowers your heart attack risk, improves your sleep, eases stress, just to name a few benefits. So there are actual physical, scientific benefits to having sex and having sex regularly.
Yep. Even if it doesn't work, I mean, you can either have a headache without sex, or you can have a headache and sex. So it's just a win.
Right.
Win.
I'll take that.
Right. All right. Don't. Trashy novels, pornography, dress up as other people, third parties, and other people, like legit other people. I mean,
Like, that's weird. Don't dress up like your friend from church. Like,
right. You know, I mean, if you're doing, I mean, when you look at the Greek root word pornography, refers to the graphic display of sexual immoral acts in writing or with images. I think we all understand what pornography is, but it's just important to note that it's not a modern phenomenon. All these things are ways of bringing another person, real or fantasy, into your marriage bed, which is never okay. You say, I'm never forgetting in high school, somebody was telling me what the point of marriage was, is that I do you, you do me, we do nobody else, all right? And remember, it's not, your mind is powerful. It's a powerful tool, okay? So if you're giving yourself to someone else in your mind, then you're, in God's mind anyway, which is all that really matters, you're actually doing that. So don't do that, all right? And if you have issues, and that's not to say, and I don't want to make light of anybody who might be struggling with actual addictions, okay? You can talk to me offline with iMessage or Amber if you feel more comfortable for the wise, and we can discuss with you certain methods for that we come across. There's an app I read off to help with pornography. We know people who have struggled with pornography who are now pornography free. So yeah, we can talk about that. I don't mean to make light of that situation. I just want to highlight that it is not, there's no place in it within the marital bed. Because nowadays a lot of modern thought will have you believe that it's okay, it's undefiled, and that's not biblical. So what is 1 Corinthians chapter 6 verse 13b? The body, however, is not meant for sexual immorality, but for the Lord, and the Lord for the body.
And just to the novels part, like, if you really like to read, I keep a good things journal, and so sometimes like sex makes its way into the journal a lot of times, but that's neither here nor there. But I remember one year I was reading a journal that I had written from like 2017, and I was like, and I got pregnant with Amani. That might not have been, that was 2017. Anyway, it was a great summer, and I enjoyed reading it. And you know what? That took me right back to my husband. So if you like to read, write your own story. Seriously, read that. Sex toys and masturbation. This is something that's not specifically addressed in the Bible, but it can be a slippery slope leading to issues with lust and going back to pornography, because a lot of times masturbation is paired with pornography. What are you looking at, and what are you thinking about when you are doing that? Self is not a self-indulgent thing. It's a God-given way to express your love to your spouse. We can desensitize our bodies from each other's touch when we are literally using battery-powered items to pleasure ourselves. And I mean, just natural body parts can't compete with that. So it's not fair to yourself or to your spouse. Romans 14 is a passage that talks about clean and unclean foods and not being a stumbling block to others. But a major concept that we get from verse 23 is that if you think something is a sin, then it is a sin for you. If you feel convicted or have doubts about whether or not you should be doing something, that means that you shouldn't be doing it. If a toy is replacing your spouse and you don't want to have sex with your husband or your wife because you already have done it with yourself, that's a problem in your marriage. That's you, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 12 says, you say, I am allowed to do anything, but not everything's good for you. Even though I'm allowed to do anything, I must not become a slave to anything. Now, the reason that we bring the scripture up is because a lot of these things, sex toys and masturbation, obviously you're not going to find a verse in the Bible talking about vibrators or masturbation. And so a lot of people say that, well, that's not a sin. And that may be true, but it doesn't mean that it is expedient to your walk with Christ. So I cannot speak to women, but I can tell from a man's perspective, you're not going to I don't know anybody who's going to be masturbating and not thinking about having sex with someone. That's just not how men are built. Men are naturally a visual creature. I remember hearing this dude hilariously recount how he found himself being attracted to a mannequin because of just how it was curved, and he's like, "Yo, what is wrong with me? This is an inanimate object." But we're wired to, heterosexual males are wired to not just respect, but not respect, but appreciate and just love the female frame. We're visual creatures, right? So you're not going to. It's just. I would be willing to bet cash money on that as well. You're not going to masturbate without thinking about sex. It seems to defeat the point of it.
Yeah.
So that's what it means. Like, there's some things that are not sin, but they're not gonna help you not sin. So I recommend you stay away from those things.
Yeah. Better safe than sorry. Enjoy your spouse. Do lingerie.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. There is nothing wrong with occasionally looking a little extra sensual and sexy for your man. Our husbands, like he just said, are visually stimulated. So find out what he likes. Lingerie might be short shorts and a tank top and a baseball cap or something. You know, what's attractive to him. It may be something lacy and frilly, whatever. But put on what your husband likes. Not all the time. You know, we don't have time for that every day. But occasionally it's nice to do.
It says, husbands, if your wife goes through trouble getting dressed up for you, don't forget to compliment her verbally. Now, I think don't forget to compliment. I feel like the verbal thing is not as necessary as much as compliment. And so I'll tell myself a little bit. Can I tell it?
All right. I don't know what you about to tell.
No, so this is, I think, our first year of marriage. I came back home from lunch from one time. And in Amber's mind, I was coming back home to enjoy marital relations. I was coming back home to eat and go back to work, and I was tired. So she came out, and she's like fully dressed in, you know, get some of this nice lingerie and everything. And I don't even think I said thank you. I only think I said, "Oh, you look nice." Did I even say that?
I don't know.
I don't think I did. I was too busy. I was more. She came out with food too. So at the time, that was more important to me than something that I didn't even expect it to do. So, you know, I ate that food happily. I probably thanked you for the food. I was like, yo, this is delicious. And I went on back my life, went back to work. I found out later that was not right, and I shouldn't have behaved in that manner.
He could have been murdered.
I adjusted myself to that. So it's very important that when your spouse, your wife goes through that effort to make herself look extra delicious, that you acknowledge it in some way. Whether you say it verbally or whether you say it physically, you know, she needs to feel appreciated. Just the extra work she put into it. And like, you know, it's not something that's just easy for, it's not, you know, despite what television tells us, you know, women ain't walking around in lingerie, just chilling and enjoying their life. Like, I just look so good to myself. Typically, it's the exact opposite stuff they're walking around in, so they're going to do that. It's with effort, it's with attention, it's deliberate. Yes, so you got to live deliberate praise. It's not that I didn't appreciate it, I just was being an idiot and I was hungry.
Yeah. We have taken great measure to make sure we only have 2 children, Teresa. And so, and even in that same vein, if you have extremely busy schedules, to avoid such a conflict like what he just described, maybe do that on a night that you have already scheduled or planned to have sex, and that way he can enjoy how fabulous you look and you don't have to kill him because you have gotten dressed up all of this way, and he talking about he tired or he hungry or like, I don't care what you are, like, lay down.
I think it was a sandwich.
Your turn. Wait, is it your turn? Or is it my turn? Oh, this one. Well, if you want to. Oral sex. So this is the Song of Solomon passage that I was talking about earlier when we first started. But this is referenced in the Bible, just not in those terms. The Song of Solomon is very, very poetic without being nasty. So Song of Solomon's 2:3 in the New Living says, like the finest apple in the orchard is my lover among other young men. I sit in his delightful shade and taste his delicious fruit. And Song of Solomon 4:16, awake north wind, rise up south wind, blow on my garden and spread its fragrance all around. Come into your garden, my love, taste its finest fruit. So I'm gonna be very mature about this. That's what the Bible says. But only engage in this if both of you are comfortable. It is totally okay to have stipulations. Example, if you ain't just step out the shower, it's not happening, okay? Make sure that you keep yourself fresh, smelling good, and manicured to your spouse's preferences, whatever that means, so that you can enjoy one another in that way if that's what you want to do.
Yeah, welcome for that rated G version. That was all me.
Yeah.
Don't do violence. All right, so I'm gonna read here and then expound on it. Little fuzzy handcuffs or tying each other up with scars may be fun, but violence does not belong with sex. That is a perversion. Hitting, whipping, choking, and being dangerous isn't what God intended when he gave us the beautiful gift of sex. Don't convolute a beautiful love story. 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 10. He is especially hard on those who follow their own twisted sexual desire and who despise authority. These people are proud and arrogant, daring even to scoff at supernatural beings without so much as trembling. And I mean, I don't know if this is really, if I'm talking to anybody out here, but it's just violence in general, hurting your spouse for pleasure. That's not right. I hope that's not something anyone's dealing with. But if you are, then yeah, you're gonna want to talk to somebody, because that's just not a appropriate way to love on your spouse. It's not in the love languages. So don't do that. That's a don't.
Do let your spouse know that you're enjoying it, and that'll look different for everyone. Your husband or wife feels affirmed when they can make you feel good, so let them know that they're doing a good job. Also, so that like if they're doing something you don't want them to do, they don't keep doing that. Okay? Do your night my night. Sometimes it's good to specify whose night it is. Your night, ladies, may be including more talking or more you being served, and his night may be more about him being served. So occasionally just do that to make sure that both parties are being fulfilled.
All right. Initiate sex. So men love it when they don't always have to be the one to do the initiation process. Let him know that you find him attractive and you want to be intimate with him. He wants your attention. He wants to know you care for him. He wants to be connected. If your wife has a higher sex drive, then make sure you initiate sex to husbands. So pretty much figure out who has the higher sex drive. Majority of the time, it's probably going to be the man, but there's those rare occasions, and it's not going to be the man. It's not even because of any type of physical problems. It's just that you married someone with a higher sex drive than yourself, husbands, and so it's going to be important that you initiate sex. You're going to have some issues making your wife feel unsexy, even if she is sexy to you, because you're not doing the initiating of sex. I will say this, probably regardless of whether or not you have the higher sex drive or not, as men, you're gonna always enjoy sex being initiated for you. It's just good feeling. But just understand that it shouldn't always be a give and a take on the initiation process. And part of this is about the studying of your spouse. You guys gotta know what's gonna work for you. All right, you got your left and right lateral limits that we're gonna telling you about what your do's and your don'ts. And now you got to get in between it and learn each other. Learn what she likes, learn what he likes, and then do that. Fill up the love tanks, the respect tanks, the sex tanks.
This one's for the ladies only. Do know your body cycle and when you're more likely to be aroused. I didn't even know that this was really a thing until my childbearing time of life, but your body does go through different phases within the 28 days if you have a standard cycle. And if you have an irregular one, then that's a different case. But pay attention to your body and notice those trends, and then take advantage of that knowledge, because James actually noticed it before me after having kids, that every week, he can pinpoint something regarding my desire. And also know that if you're breastfeeding, you will be drier down below. That is a scientific fact. Get you some lube. There's no need for the friction, y'all. Express to your husband that you need a little bit more foreplay to get ready, because when we first got married, at the drop of a hat, ready all the time. Boom. Now, even if my mind is ready, maybe my body is not, because I'm older, things are changing in my body. Give clear directions to your husband so that he can be effective and that you can have an orgasm. It's not just about him having one, it's about you having one or some two. I just said that. And don't be afraid to give specific directions about I want a mouth here and a hand here and whatever. Tell him what you want so that you can enjoy yourself. And even if your husband does know what you like after being married for this long, he knows what I like, but he can't read my mind about what I'm in the mood for right then. So sometimes just tell him what I want. It's not that hard.
Do's. Now, we've pretty much been saying this throughout the entire thing, was to have a servant spirit. Ultimately, the goal is to please each other. Again, if you're doing it right, you're completely forgetting about what makes you happy, and that's their job. Your job is what makes her happy. All right, so your job in sex is to please your spouse sexually, and that's your spouse's job, is to please you sexually. Mm-hmm. You gotta learn your love language. You gotta learn your body. Be a student of your wife and what pleases her, and then just do it like Nike says. Mm-hmm. All right. So the takeaway from that is do have that servant spirit and serve your wife.
Yeah, because if you're aiming to please each other, like James has said multiple times during this, then you don't have to worry about yourself being taken care of, because your spouse is taking care of you and you're taking care of them. So that is everything. Of course, there's a lot more stuff that we can hit, but we also do want to be mindful that we are on Facebook, on social media, so everything does not belong out here. If you have questions about something that we said or something that we didn't say, please feel free to inbox us for a private conversation, and all of our answers will be biblically based responses to our best ability. Thank you to my husband for participating in this. Your reward will be great. And thank you for tuning in. So be blessed and have sex with your spouse. Love you all.
Yay.
Where's the finish?